It needs to be moved along, we have to take care of doing that. The questions that you guys all submitted came in to us, and I'll be moderating those questions at the end of the session. So again, appreciate you guys all coming out. The way the meeting's gonna run, I'm gonna turn it over to Angie here in a second. She's gonna kind of walk you through some introductions. This could be a formal presentation, we'll be working through and answering a lot of the questions you guys have been asking, actually a lot of the questions that came in through electronically. When they're done, I'm gonna come back up, and then I'm actually gonna moderate the questions that did not get answered during my presentation. You guys submitted, we'll go through those questions, get them answered. All goes well. We'll be done with that by about 7:15 or so. And then we'll, you guys can come up with the live stream will end recording, but the folks will stay here and you can come up and actually have conversations. So, up there for everybody. All right, with that, I'm going to introduce Angie Hanks. Everybody knows Angie from Ironman, does an amazing job with that. She's also the president of CWDI.
Thank you, Bill. And thank you all for coming this evening. It's great to see so many from our community that are interested in Cape Cover and the waterfront development. We're looking forward to sharing our current plans with you and what our plans are for the future. Before we get started, I just want to introduce several of our board members that are here in attendance, as well as a few from our development team. So first off, my name is Angie Hanks. As Bill mentioned, I'm the president of CWDI. I also run both of our Ironman events in town, Eagleman and Ironman Maryland, that bring about 12,000 visitors to Cambridge and Dorchester County each year, and an economic development of over 12 million. I moved to Cambridge 20 years ago to pursue my master's degree in environmental science at Plum Point Lab. Loved it so much and decided to stay. I was appointed to the CWDI board in 2023 and then became president this January. We have Shay Lucisco, who is our vice president. Shay is a Cambridge native and lives in Cambridge with her family. She joined the CWDI board in 2022. She holds a BS in psychology with a minor in political science from the University of Maryland and brings experience in workforce development and community outreach. She also hosts a regular podcast called Shay Speaks, where she brings community leaders to the public to discuss current issues in life in Cambridge. Her extensive contacts and audience reach will allow CWDI to improve and expand its messaging in its most important stakeholder, which is, of course, our community. Frank Narr is our secretary treasurer. Frank has been active in the community in Dorchester County since he and his wife moved here in 1993. Frank received his BA in Business Administration from Franklin and Marshall College and MBA in Entrepreneurship from Indiana University. Frank is a retired CPA and Chief Financial Officer of ISG International, which is National Insurance Brokerage here in Cambridge, and he's former Executive Director of Salem Park Inc. Frank has been a board member since its CWDI's formation in 2018. Mike Prince is the governor's appointee to the CWDI board and is the Executive Director of the Maryland Stadium Authority since 2008. Mike earned a BA from Yale University, an MBA from Syracuse, and is a holder of a CFA charter. He oversees the strategic efforts and fiduciary responsibilities associated with the Maryland Stadium Authority's $1.5 billion worth of assets. Prior to joining MSA, Mike was the Executive Vice President of BMA and served the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development in Salt Lake City, where he worked with the Salt Lake Organizing Committee for the 2002 Winter Olympics. Matt Leonard is our Executive Director. Matt moved with his wife here to Cambridge in December of 2019 and accepted the position as the CWDI Executive Director in 2022. He has training and education in civil engineering, organizational management and development, and an MS in building science from Virginia Tech Economic Development Institute, mediation and green building practices. Matt's 35 years of professional experience includes economic and community development, infrastructure development, land development, and organizational development and improvement. On to some of our project partners. Keenan Rice is the president of UNICAP Inc. Keenan has worked almost exclusively in the areas of urban renewal, economic development, and growth management for the last 30 years. UNICAP has advised on over 350 tax districts nationwide, including 65 in Maryland. Keenan graduated with a degree in accounting and received a master's degree in finance. He has been a guest lecturer at several universities and has been a guest speaker at numerous conferences hosted by the Government Finance Officers Association, the Bond Buyer, and the Urban Land Institute. He is a registered municipal advisor, a registered municipal advisor principal, and licensed investment advisor representative. And finally, we have Ken Yusa, who is the principal for Lawrence Christie Associates. Ken is a licensed civil engineer with extensive coastal engineering experience, and he leads our engineering design team for Cambridge Harbor. He and his wife Debbie have been in Cambridge with Dorchester County for the past 35 years, raising their 2 children here. Ken worked for an engineering firm in Cambridge from 1986 to 2002. He was the principal in charge of design for the Salem Park Visitor Center, an existing beach area, as well as initial phases of Everybody's Play Space, Grand National Monument, boardwalk and stone revetment at the former Dorchester General Hospital site, the existing wharf rehabilitation and promenade design, and the new promenade design. You can see on the screen, this is the entire CWDI leadership. Unfortunately, 2 of our board members are out of state and cannot join us this evening. And we do have that one vacant spot, and probably most of you know that we're waiting to be filled with a county council appointment. I'm now going to turn things over to Frank Nahr, and he'll go a little bit into the history and formation of CWDI.
Thank you, Andy. Some of you here may know me and know my involvement in this project since its inception. So,
Speak
a
up.
little bit.
You
You can hear me now? Okay.
Yes, speak up.
All right, so I'm going to probably answer a few questions that are submitted, as well as tell you a little bit about how we perform. So first of all, who are we? We're all volunteer board. That means that we give up our time and our talents with no compensation in return. We are fiduciaries to the organization's mission to develop the Cambridge waterfront in partnership with the community and to create and sustainably maintain the development as an inviting, accessible, active, and joyful place to live, work, play, and visit. We are committed to the community's vision for the waterfront, a vision that was initially created by the Grassroots Committee 100 Dorchester over 30 years ago. A vision that was then championed by the Board of Salem Park. A vision that brought the iconic visitor center. A vision that attracted the Hive to Cambridge. This vision has been presented formally no less than 5 times over 2 decades. This vision is embodied in the master site plan that we will detail this evening. And we are committed to the goals of the development. That it is 1, financially feasible and sustainable. 2, welcomes and provides opportunities to all members of our community. 3, provides a continuous public waterfront promenade and public open space. 4, maintains and enhances our unique working waterfront. And lastly, it complements and provides connections to our downtown and many unique and diverse communities and attractions. So why were we formed? CWDI was formed to be apolitical, to maintain progress through political cycles and instability. Indeed, this is a worthy goal. Unfortunately, over the 30 years that I've been involved in this project, we've collectively fallen short at various times throughout the 30-year history. But nonetheless, the community's vision has stood the test of time. Why were we formed? There have been several moments in the 30-year history of our work on vision, and the most recent came in 2018. University of Maryland Shore Regional Health decided to build a freestanding medical facility on Route 50 and to close the hospital on the waterfront. This changed the waterfront's development opportunities significantly, from an 11-acre development to an almost 40-acre development. How were we there? So this all came together in 2018 by an agreement amongst the city, the county, and the state. So it's important to note that CWDI has 3 founding partners, and we look to them for leadership, guidance, and support. And finally, what is CWDI? CWDI is a private nonprofit development corporation. We have a public mission to ensure the community's interests and assets are protected in any development that occurs on the waterfront. And there is one very important benefit of being a nonprofit development corporation. We have the benefit of time. Time to make sure that we have the right development partners. Partners who are committed to the community vision. With that, please check.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening, should I say. Shayla Cisco, CWDI's Board Vice President. I just actually want to share with the community how the board is made up. As Frank mentioned, we are a 7-member board. Of the 7 members, we have 1 that has been appointed by our governor, 2 appointed by the county, and 3 appointed by the city, 1 also appointed by CWDI. I myself is one of the city appointing authorities that serve on this board. Again, just to reiterate, everything that we do as board members, we do it completely voluntary. We receive no compensation whatsoever. Our terms are staggered. Terms are 4-year long, and there is 1 county vacancy, which many of you are aware of. We do contract services, which again, we'll get into all of the details with the partners that we have contracted service with. Our executive director is a contracted service. Our administrative is a contracted service with the Chamber of Commerce, financial, legal, social media, property management and design, which you'll hear more about later from our partners. And with that being said, I do want to, you've heard from Andy, some of our bios, some brief information of all of the bios from the board members here tonight, but encompassing of the board members, some of the skills that are on our board. We have the land development, infrastructure development, economic development, organizational development, building science, construction management, private partnerships, development law, business, financial, and accounting, some marketing experience, entrepreneurship, and environmental science. And at this time, I'll actually turn this over to our Executive Director, Matt Leonard.
Thank you, Shay. Thank you all for being here tonight. Really appreciate your interest in the project. You mentioned, we talked about our development team. Some of the members of the team are here on the panel tonight. Any of you people who've ever dealt with development, you know the developers actually don't get their hands dirty. They hire a really good team of experts to help them put together the details of the project, make sure it goes the way it should go. We have a really great team. We can see here kind of our primary partners in this, our development team. We have land development experts. We have landscape development. We have urbanism development. MRA is here with Ken, who's our designer for UNCAD, do the financial stuff. So we've got a lot of things covered that we need to. This is what developers do, put together a team of experts to make sure that their project is going the way it needs to go. Okay, the last partner we really need, the last critical member of our team, is the private developers who will bring millions of dollars of investment into our community. What's CWI's role? So we take a community-first approach, identify private partners, balance best development practices with the public benefit. We are community development, economic development, and improve on prior outcomes. There's been various developments, of course, over time in the city of Cambridge, some of which have provided great benefit, some have not been so helpful or friendly to the community. We want to make sure we do it differently. Community-first approach. You've heard Frank talk about the history of this development, how long it's been going on, the vision of the community. There's been multiple efforts to gather the community's vision and input over those decades. We've gathered that, we compiled it, we reviewed it, we included it in the plans that we have going forward right now. To identify those private partners, back in July of 2022, we issued a request for expression of interest after the broader development community. It was open for 120 days. In November, we actually issued the results 1 week after the close of that, including information about 27 respondents, and reported on that progress in subsequent open board meetings. Prior approach has been done occasionally in Cambridge. You hear a lot about this as master developer. We have master developers who developed along the creek. Some of the outcomes have been blocked waterfront access. The general public does not have access to those portions of the creek. Public roads have been closed. No retail or restaurants have been developed in some of those areas. Very exclusive housing and tax abatements have been provided. Master developer is one approach. And sometimes it's the right approach. So CWDI has actually vetted 7 master developers in our time since 2018. Common to all of the master developers that we've spoken to are certain requirements they would have in order to bring their particular expertise to the project. They want the land for free. They will develop a team of experts, just like CWDI did. And they would expect CWDI to pay for that team of experts, like we already did. They would expect the program to be relocated at the community's expense, because that's real estate they would want to develop as far as dense condos on the water. They want the public spaces to be built with public funds, something we're already doing. And they want the infrastructure to be built using public funds, something we've already proposed and plan on pursuing. So some of what we're doing is similar to a master development. The difference is we put the community's interest first. We're not going to move the program. We're not going to block access to the waterfront. But different outcomes require a different approach. So CWDI has put out a request for expressions of interest to identify individual developers, dedicated public waterfront access to the community, improve public roads and parking, public park added and expanded, retail for the community, accessible housing, and it will be revenue generating for the community. There will be no tax abatements. The economic development approach that CWDI is taking would actually net each the city and the county $10 to $15 million of additional revenue over the first 30 years. More after that. We'll have $155 million economic impact for the community. To create 270 permanent jobs when the project is complete. During construction, temporary jobs will be over 900. Cambridge Harbor plan. This is where we are today. Many of you are aware that the hospital has been demolished, or hospital, and the site's been cleared. This is the master site plan that we have been using to identify the right private partners, development partners. You see Chopin River on the top edge, Highway 50 to the right, Cambridge Creek on the left, and then Burn Street is down on the southern edge of our development zone. Phase 1, which will occur from 2022 to 2027, is everything from Franklin Street west to Cambridge Creek. It includes a boutique hotel. Boutique hotel will have 90 to 100 rooms, it brings $30 million of capital investment, 75% full-time jobs, with indoor and outdoor meeting and event spaces, various bars and restaurants. We are working closely with the hotel developer now and negotiating the final deal with them. It will be associated with a national brand that people know and recognize. It will include the name Cambridge Harbor as part of the name of the hotel, and we expect final agreements probably this month. Yacht maintenance company. One of the things that the community has mentioned very clearly over the years, over the decades, is that they expect the maritime heritage and history of Cambridge and Dorchester County to be honored and promoted. Yacht maintenance has a boatyard there. They're looking at doing a $25 million expansion, adding maritime trades and boatworks, 30 direct full-time jobs. They will build an 850-ton travel boat, one of the largest private boatworks on the East Coast. They will attract significant new types of boatworks and work for this community. And then the Richardson Maritime Museum. CWDI purchased the Richardson Maritime Museum about a year or so ago because they needed help financially. We're working with them to put together a sustainable model to promote their vision that they've had for 30 years, because their mission aligns with our mission, which is promoting maritime history and heritage. We believe deeply in what they're doing. We think what they can do to build a museum out there eventually, build an active boatworks, a living history type of program that become one of the anchors for the Cambridge Harbor development. like the hotel, would be one of the anchors for the Cambridge Harbor development. And then phase one, there's also a few smaller development parcels, mixed use for residential and retail. We are working on identifying right partners for that. CWDI may actually help develop that along with the right development partners. But it's kind of a way to early activate those types of uses, retail and residential, so people have an idea of how things can work out there and still provide open public access to the waterfront for the community and a lot of opportunities for the community. Phase two. Phase two would be everything from Franklin Street and Boat east to Highway 50. That's the vertical development area for phase two. It will include approximately 240 residential units of various types and sizes to actually increase accessibility for people trying to get into the housing market and those looking who are in the housing market already and want to find a new place. But about 30,000 square feet of retail concentrating on various food and beverage. There will be 7 acres of open public space, most of it on the waterfront. Something that you won't see from a master developer because they would want to monetize the waterfront. 750 parking spaces. Many of the master developers we spoke to like the fact that we have planned in about 750 public parking spaces. They want them to be private for the people they sell property to. We're not going to do that. We're going to maintain the boat ramp and the boat ramp parking. In fact, we'll be improving those and of course continue to promote maritime areas. Phase two infrastructure activities we already have designed funded by ARPA through the state and the county rural development fund. General schematic infrastructure design for phase two is nearly complete. Provides flexibility to accommodate various development parcels once we identify the really next best development partners for us. Multiple developers responded to our request for expressions of interest from 2 years ago and continue to show interest. They're looking to see phase one get activated and built out. That's what the phase two developers want to see. They want to see the hotel announced and start for the construction. They want to see the development of yacht maintenance. They want to see the development of the phase one part of the project. There may be a second RFP to make some final selections for phase two. We're still debating the best way to proceed. We were fortunate in the initial request for expression of interest to actually identify quite a few good possible development partners. And the preliminary land use packet was delivered to the city planning staff back in November of last year. We're awaiting comments back on that so we can make sure we align our efforts with the city planning department with the development of Cambridge. So, the public amenities that we've been talking about. We're going to make the public park a promenade that goes around the entire park and ties into the city's bikeways. It'll be a highly activated park, a lot of space for people to just enjoy themselves casually, or we will actually plan and coordinate events out there. We show a small stage on the west end of the park that have musical events. Public beach will expand the beaches out there now and improve it so it's safer. We have plans to find a right partner to guard the beach too, so it's safer for the community as well. The county's been a great partner in this aspect because they do own most of the beach. The East Gateway, that's Highway 50 on the top edge of the drawing there, Maryland to the right. And you see what we've done there is create a space where it'll attract people who are on Highway 50 and they hadn't planned on stopping in Cambridge, but maybe they're on the way to the beach and they need to take a break. We've got some parking spots, and then when they get out and they explore, they'll see some information about the history of Cambridge, some of the different types of heritage that we have, and a map that directs them to go downtown to other great amenities that we have in Cambridge. Cambridge Harbor is not there to be a stop for people only. It's also there to direct people into the community. There's other great places we have for people to enjoy. And then the tree park and memorial garden, we're fortunate in Cambridge, we have 2 large English elms. One is the champion English elm in the state of Maryland. It's the largest one in the state of Maryland. We are going to preserve that and build around it a park that will also honor the history of those people who work at Dorchester General Hospital. And then the waterfront promenade, we talked about this. It'll be a continuous promenade that will start at Hayward Street, go all the way around the waterfront. So the public can enjoy it. About a 20-foot wide hardscape promenade. There'll be benches, there'll be lighting, there'll be picnic areas for people to enjoy. Open, free public access, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Funding and financing. I'll start and I'm going to turn it over to Keenan Rice, who is our financing expert. So sources of funds to date, about $13 million. Most of it has come from the state, almost $9 million from the state.
2.5 million from the federal government. We won a grant from the federal government a couple of years ago to actually help start building the promenade. We'll break ground on that sometime in July of this year. $1 million ARPA through the county and the state, $500,000 ARPA through the city direct and county direct. Again, $13 million we've raised in the last few years. That's how we have spent that money or have allocated. It's not all been spent yet, but you can see, 24% in design, 27% in construction, a lot of acquisition, a lot of demolition to start this project. Phase one, this is the sources and uses for phase one. You can see we need to raise about another $2.9 million during phase one to be able to build out the public aspects of that. We're working on those plans with the various funding sources we have right now. And then phase two, you'll see there's about a $7 million gap for phase two. Of course, that goes through 2032. So again, we raised $13 million in the last 2.5 years. We really believe we can do another 7 in the next 8 or 9 years. And then last, you'll see those two highlighted sections. We show tax increment financing as a source, and the use of that is for public infrastructure. And now Keenan Rice is going to come up and talk about tax increment financing.
Good evening, and thank you to everyone for being here this evening and letting us tell you a little bit about this project. I'm very excited to have the opportunity to work on it. I work on tax increment financing in over 30 states throughout the country. Really have a passion for the type of projects we work on, and this is a project where I just share that passion. I just think there's a lot that's exciting about this project and a lot of public benefit. So what is tax increment financing? Well, there's several important things I think to know about tax increment financing. Number one, it is self-financing. In other words, the new development creates new taxes, and a portion of those new taxes are used to pay for public infrastructure that's necessary to pay for the development of the private development. We always look for something we call a nexus when we're creating a TIF. We want the tax increment that's being invested to actually create that tax increment. We're not capturing any tax revenues from any other part of the city. It's only from the development that's occurring, and it's that investment of the tax increment that makes the development possible. Another important fact about tax increment financing, it only goes to public infrastructure. None of the money goes to private development. None of the private development receives any of this money. It only goes for public infrastructure. Some examples of how tax increment financing, which has been used extensively in Maryland, there's approximately 65 tax increment financing districts in Maryland. One is to redevelop urban areas. If you can imagine, the city of Baltimore uses a lot of tax increment financing. Washington, D.C. does as well. Of course, it's not in Maryland, but it's another example of a city that makes very extensive use of tax increment financing for redevelopment in the city. It can also be used to build and rebuild public infrastructure. That's one of the uses here, is to actually build the public infrastructure to allow this property to be developed. It can be used as a means of attracting private dollars for development. In fact, that's one of the things, there's a number of criteria we look at for tax increment financing, what we call public policy issues. And there's like 10 key public policy issues we've identified that we always look at and make sure when we're creating a TIF, we're using it in a manner that meets these public policy criteria. One of them is that we're leveraging private funds. We want to see significant private funds going in and being attracted at the use, as a result of the use of the tax increment financing, which is one of the things that will happen here. There'll be very significant amount of private investment in this property, but critical to make that happen is the tax increment financing. The tax increment financing, in addition to making the development possible, also creates significant positive tax dollars. Over a period of approximately 30 years, we're looking at funding the TIF providing about $22.5 million for public infrastructure. Now, when you pay that over time, you pay that as well as interest. Just like when you have a mortgage, you get a $250,000 mortgage, you pay it back over however many years, you're paying interest on it as well. It's the same with any kind of financing. So in both the city and the county, the amount of revenues, tax revenues being created is approximately $40 million. The portion that goes to repay the bonds is about $29-30 million for each. So each of those jurisdictions are receiving about $10 million net after repaying the tax increment financing. The TIF district, as I mentioned, is only the development. It's not any other property other than what's being developed. So it's, again, it has that nexus where it's the investment of the tax increment that's creating the tax increment. We're not looking to capture any property tax that's outside of what's being developed. So if you own property within the TIF, you're going to pay your normal property tax if it's not any different. It's just the city and county are going to put those property taxes in a special fund to repay the bonds. If you live out, as an owner though, you don't really know the difference. You know, you're just paying your normal property taxes. It's really a commitment on the part of the city and the county to put those new property taxes into a special fund to help repay the bonds. If you live outside the district, your money's going to the general fund just like it always does. None of that money goes to the tax increment financing. So currently the property in the TIF district, most of that is public property, not paying taxes. So it's either zero or very little in the way of property taxes being generated in the district. Over the 30 years after the TIF is created, it's estimated to produce almost $80 million. So you take property producing zero or almost no tax revenue to creating $80 million over the 30-year period of the tax increment bond, which is about, as we talked about, approximately $40 million for each of the two taxing bodies, which results in a net of about $10 million to each of those taxing bodies. I just want to emphasize that CWDI doesn't get a penny of the tax increment financing. None of that goes to them. It all goes to public improvements. It's just going to pay for the public interest in the project. All the private development has to pay for itself. It doesn't get any of this money. It's also important to understand that there's no liability to either the city or the county. These bonds are issued as what we call special revenue bonds. They're paid solely from the new tax dollars that are generated. There's no liability on the part of the city or county to repay the bond. It doesn't affect their GO borrowing. Their general obligation bonds or bonds which city or county would issue, well, they would guarantee the repayment of those bonds. They're not guaranteeing the repayment of the TIF bonds. The TIF bonds have no effect on the GO bonds that the city or county would issue in the future. The tax increment financing, though, is really critical to the development. Earlier, when we looked at, when Matt went over the budget, so there's no tax increment going to the first phase, okay? There is tax increment for the second phase. And you may remember there's $22.5 million in tax increment. There's about a $7 million gap right now in the budget, okay? If you took out the tax increment financing, that becomes a $30 million gap. There's no way to fill that, $30 million gap. It's reasonable to fill a $7 million gap. CWDI has been very successful in getting state money, federal money, other sources of money. I thought it was interesting in looking at that, the money that's been raised so far, I think it was approximately $13 million. $400,000 has come from the city and the county. All the rest, almost $13 million, has come from other sources of funds. So it's really a great job of leveraging city and county money, attracting a lot of money to move the project forward. It's reasonable to think that there's still a $7 million gap in the phase 2 budget, given their success in raising other money. It's reasonable to believe that can be bridged. But if that $7 million gap becomes a $30 million gap, that's just not feasible. So the TIF is really important to making this project happen. And the results of the project going forward, number one, it provides some very nice public amenities, open to all the public, improving the beach, creating the park, creating trails, walkways along the water. Just becomes a really nice place, for the public to come, as well as there will be additional new restaurants, nice restaurants for the community. So that's the most important thing in my mind of what the TIF does. It makes the project possible, and it creates some really nice public amenities and facilities. But it also creates additional tax dollars. We've talked about that. It takes property that's not producing any tax dollars and allows it to create significant tax dollars, as well as helping provide, public parking and way for people to, come there, not only have amenities available, but parking, for the public as well. Matt, I think it's back to you on sustainability. This thing's kind of crazy. It keeps jumping around.
It's on auto forward, unfortunately.
Thank you, Keenan. Appreciate that. So I just let it go on its own, Bill? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think a lot of you have experienced that quite often when you see a public project get built. There's a lot of money to build it, but there's no money to sustain it. CWDI is taking a different model. we will be sustaining the property long-term as a nonprofit by collection of common area maintenance fees from the private investors or those who own property out in the Cambridge Harbor development. So we can activate the public spaces to the benefit of the entire community, bring in visitors, right? When people come across the bridge, if they see the park, highly activated, musical events, those types of things, if the beach is activated and guarded, it just brings more people in. It'll pay for the ongoing operations and maintenance of all the public spaces out there. And we think that's very important because it means no tax increases are necessary to maintain the public spaces. Again, we'll do that through charges to the Cambridge Harbor property owners, similar to an HOA, if anyone's ever done an HOA. But the difference here is the dollars that we get from the property owners actually benefit all the members of the community of Cambridge and Dorchester and visitors because it's for the public space. So again, we shift costs away from the city and the county and reducing upward pressure on the taxes. And that is the end of the formal presentation. Bill.
Sorry about the auto slide there. That was a last minute. You can keep that mic. All right. Sorry about that. We had a laptop issue right before that one for you guys to answer questions with. And we had to swap out a machine, and we ended up with an auto slide function going on there. So in terms of the questions that came in, just to give you guys, I told you we were the ones that collected the questions. We got 65 questions that were submitted based on the circulation. We circulated this as best we could. I know that everybody here shared it, different folks shared it. We actually put it in through our e-news. It went out through e-blast. It was in the newsletter. So again, we had 65 questions. They came from 20 different folks that submitted those questions. When I got them in, we actually sat down, we categorized them. There were several key categories they ran into. There was questions about the board, questions about business structure, questions about documentation, general funding, master developer, TIF, et cetera. And so we've got those all categorized. There were a lot of repeat questions, which good and bad. I mean, it means folks are thinking about the same things, so we get that. The two top categories were YMCA and questions about the board. So we'll be addressing a lot of those questions tonight as we go through in terms of talking through those. You can't hear me? Sorry. Oh, slow down. Okay. I enunciate my words very well. I just say them very fast. Okay. So again, the top two categories were YMCA and the board. They each had 13 questions each in terms of as they came in. I was following through. I got a preview of the slide deck, and I also followed through as they were talking tonight. 37 of the questions that were asked were actually answered during this presentation tonight. So that leaves about 26 total questions, but those actually collapsed into about 8 or 9. And we're going to get through all 8 or 9 of those, hopefully, as I ask these to these folks. They have one mic, they're going to pass it back and forth to answer the questions. I'm going to actually take the questions kind of in the order of volume in terms of the topics that actually had the most questions come in around it. And the YMCA was clearly one of the most questioned ones. There are basically two basic questions about the Y, and I'm going to ask them both at the same time and let you guys address the questions around that. Is one, what is the current status of the Y in terms of what you guys are doing? And then why would you consider a not-for-profit entity, a non-taxable entity, to be located on the waterfront?
You probably noticed in the presentation, we didn't show the YMCA because what we showed were the development partners and the developments with whom we're actually negotiating deals. At the moment, we're not negotiating a deal with the YMCA. The YMCA came to us in the same way all of the other development partners that we're discussing projects with came to us. That's through the request for expressions of interest that we put out about 2 years ago. They submitted to us what they would like to do and why they'd like to do it. We reviewed them like we did every other potential development partner or investor. Is what they were offering to provide at Cambridge Harbor beneficial to the mission of Cambridge Harbor? Very clearly it is. We showed in our master site plan, which was developed even before the end of the REOI, one large community partner that we needed to activate the space at the waterfront. In order to attract retailers, in order to make sure that the property values are what they need to be to then generate the common area maintenance charges we need to sustain it long term, we need to show that we have anchors who will bring people to the site. not just the people who live there, but people who live in the broader community or visitors. Lately, the YMCA of the Chesapeake has built some fantastic new facilities that are bringing hundreds to up to 1,000 people a day to those sites on average, year round. That's not a seasonal number. Those are the types of people who, when they come there to enjoy the YMCA, the activated public spaces that the YMCA can help us provide, the guarded beach that the YMCA can help us provide. Also, shop at the retail shops that we're going to be providing out there. They eat at the restaurants. They activate the space. That makes the residential properties more valuable to people. That helps support the hotel. That helps support Richardson Maritime's mission. That helps support yacht maintenance and all the things that they're going to be doing out there. So at the moment, again, we're not working a deal with them. We're not negotiating a deal. We believe that they're still continuing to work their side of the plan. And when they're ready and say to us, hey, we actually have now a real plan and real financing, unless and until someone else presents, they are the great activation partner for Cambridge Harbor.
And then the follow-on for that would be, there were about 3 questions on this. What happens to the property where the YMCA is today? And you may or may not be able to answer that. So I'll tell you this.
Yeah, that would be for the YMCA to decide.
Any thoughts on what it might be?
Well, you know, I think, because I actually live a half a block from the YMCA, it should be infill residential to match the neighborhood. I think that is the best use of that property out there, is to make sure that it looks like the rest of the neighborhood on the west end, right? So single family homes, about the same density, about the same size that are out there already. That's what we think would make sense out there. That's something that CWDI could help with if that's something that needs to be done. It's something I'd like to see as someone who lives a half a block from the current Y and is a member of the current Y.
Okay. Those are, I mean, that really is a summary of the various questions that came. There were 13 of them, but that was generally the way they summarized up. Multiple questions on the board. You guys touched on some of these, but didn't answer them directly. So one of the questions that came out, and this may be best answered by a board member, is are the appointed board members responsive to the bodies that appointed them?
So to answer that question, I'll say as a city appointee, yes, I am. And our other board members can speak to that. It is very unfortunate that in the press that have gone out, that has not been duly noted, that as a city appointee, I have been in constant communication, not only with the current city manager, but also our city commissioners. So I'll pass it to Angie.
So the board members, we are appointed by county, city, state, to relay information back and forth to our appointing bodies. But our main responsibility is to CWDI and to further the mission of CWDI. We hope that the appointing bodies, you know, during the vetting process of that appointment, have chosen people that they have full confidence in not only advancing the mission of CWDI, but also taking into account the city and the county, whoever they're representing. But at the end of the day, we are the board members of CWDI, and that's where we're really beholden to for any decisions that we're making. Of course, we are reporting back to our appointing bodies and are taking any comments, questions, concerns they have to the board for discussion. Absolutely, that's part of our job as the appointees to kind of bridge that gap. So that's certainly what we're doing. And at any time, if any of our appointing bodies, be it the city or the county, have questions, need to reach out, we're always open to talk with them and discuss matters.
Anybody else? Okay. There was 3 questions that kind of had this same bent or wording in it. They're curious as to how you address potential conflicts of interest. How do you make sure that board members are not profiting from their activities associated with CWDI, and what's the accountability and oversight mechanism?
Okay. We have a conflict of interest policy that we all must follow. And when we first were formed, we were asked actually to sign or at least adhere to the conflict of interest policies of the appointing authority. So we had to disclose the same type of information that an elected official would have to submit to the city or the county. This board is, for the most part, members of our community. Ultimately, we answer to the community and to our neighbors. I've been at this for 30 years. I am a former CPA, so anybody who knows the requirements of CPA and the code of ethics we must follow, it is certainly ingrained in my being, and I know it is ingrained in all of us who sit at the table at each board meeting. So I can assure you that we are dealing with issues that could be considered conflict, that we address them. If and ever we're in a situation where there is a conflict of interest, we do abstain, and we're not part of a decision-making process. So that's what I can share with you. The other thing that we're doing as well is I've been the Secretary Treasurer for 2 years, and since I've taken on that position, we have conducted annual financial audits. In fact, we completed the 2022 financial audit last year. We received an unqualified opinion. That is the gold standard of a financial audit. We are in the process of doing the 2023 audit now and expect the same unqualified opinion upon its completion. And again, that's important. That gives another, I guess, essence of trust in the community that someone is looking at what we're doing, how we're doing it, and saying that we're doing it in accordance to the rules and regulations.
All right, thank you. The next two questions are tied together. They're about, I categorize them as business structure. The question is basically they want to understand the written agreement or whatever the contract that you have with the city and the county. How does that work? And how do you, and there's been a lot of talk about breach of contract publicly lately. They want to understand, are you in breach of contract? And if so, can you explain how you're going to rectify that?
No, we are not in breach of any contracts or agreements, so we don't need to do anything to rectify that. In fact, in the presentation, I think some questions have been asked about an RFP. We talked about how we issued an REOI, which is similar to an RFP, in 2022 in the time frame required, for the length of time required, and then provided information about the results of that in a way that allowed the community and our partners to know what had occurred without breaching the confidential aspects of each of the respondents.
Anybody else? Go good. The next one, again, I'm not sure you guys can answer it, but they want to know why you didn't disclose their corporate counsel is the brother-in-law of a councilman. They want to know why CWDI did not disclose that their corporate counsel is the brother-in-law of a city councilman.
So CWDI has used 3 different law firms for different purposes. We used McLeod Law Group, who was great in helping to get CWDI established and get the agreements in place between CWDI and the partners, great municipal attorneys. We have Miles and Stockbridge, who provide us about 9 different types of services, you know, from bond counsel to trademarking to covenants to land use and general counsel. One of the 100 or so attorneys who's part of Miles and Stockbridge, I do believe, may be related to one of the city council members, not a conflict. And then we also use Nelson Mullins as our government relations attorney, in essence, to help us access as best we can various funds and various programs at the federal, state, and even local level.
Okay. The next question is around property sale. So on the website, the budget shows, on the CWDI website, the budget shows a property sale in 2023 of $875,000. What was that property sale and how was the value calculated?
Gotcha. Okay, so you said 875,000.
Yeah, I think this may be mixing Richardson with the
Right.
yacht maintenance.
Yeah, so the expected sale in 2023 was to yacht maintenance for their expansion. The timing of that just didn't occur in 2023. We do expect that to occur in 2024. The timing of the sale was expected to occur in 2023. It didn't happen in 2023. We do expect that to occur here in the next couple months in 2024. Still can't hear? Okay, sorry. We did not sell the property in 2023. We expected to, but there were some delays, so therefore we're expecting the sale of the property in 2024. So that was the sale of the yacht maintenance property. And again, this is property that yacht maintenance has leased from the city of Cambridge initially, had, I believe, 2 15-year leases. And those leases came with the property when we assumed the property. And like I said, that's the property that we'd be selling to yacht maintenance.
Yeah, they did say it was the budget. It was the operating budget, so it was budgeted for 2023. What he's saying is that it did happen in 2023, even though it was budgeted. It's actually now budgeted for 2024. The add-on to that question was, how were the property values determined?
So just to expand a little bit on the yacht maintenance, the transfer of property yacht maintenance, it was in the agreement with the city and CWDI that the yacht maintenance property is already part of an approved plan, and they want to see that expanded. So they had a 15-year lease with a 15-year automatic extension as long as yacht maintenance paid their lease on time. The lease was transferred to CWDI when we took the property. In our conversations with yacht maintenance, they told us they had plans to expand, but in order to expand with $25 million of investment, they needed to own the property. Again, that was something kind of pre-approved in the agreement with the city. And so we ran the value of the property in 2 ways. We did a net present value on that long-term lease, and we had an appraisal done. This is for the first piece, the 2.6 acres. The appraisal came in at $520,000. Net present value was about $500,000. We're selling it to them for $600,000.
Okay. Next question is a general question about public space. And it's a long question, so I'm not going to read the whole thing, but the general consensus or belief in the question is that there's already too much public space in Cambridge. Why do you think the public space needs to be as big as it is?
So I would respectfully disagree with whoever asked that question. Based on our community surveys that have been done over the years, overwhelmingly, the community wants public space. They want access to the waterfront. So we are providing what the community has clearly stated that they want. I don't think many people would argue with the value of public space. People can have events such as the Kite Festival. We're actually going to have a 200-person family reunion of someone in the community later this summer. Various activations can happen. There is no large public space, especially on the waterfront in Cambridge right now. And I think it's important that we have access to that. You go to Talbot County, there's not much or any really public access to the water. And that's what Cambridge Harbor and the Waterfront Park is providing.
Anybody else? Okay. Next question one person had was in terms of worrying about sea level rise, are you wasting public funds building a property that's going to be underwater in 50 years?
My name is Kenneth Yusuf. We are taking into consideration sea level rise. We're very fortunate that the bulk of the property that is out there is at a generally higher elevation than many other areas of Dorchester County and the city. An example would be, for example, Great Marsh Park, that many of you are familiar with. The other thing that we're doing is that the lower elevation areas are along the immediate waterfront in the open space park area. So if there is some temporary inundation in some of those areas, it's not going to affect the more important public infrastructure, residential construction and commercial construction that is built a little bit further back from the water and at a higher elevation. But we are absolutely taking that into account in the design and the review of the project.
Thank you. This question, and there may be something going on down there I'm not aware of, but the question was, why are you building a hotel instead of fixing the sewage that's running into the river? Some of you guys have a runoff problem down there or not, I'm aware of, but that was the question that came in.
We're building a hotel because it's something, an amenity in the community that's greatly needed. And we have a number of hotel developers who have presented during our search for the right partners. We found a really good one. We think it'll be great for the community. It is unrelated to any sewer issues I'm aware of.
One important aspect of the TIF-funded improvements of the project is upgrading some of the water and sewer infrastructure. For example, there's a gravity sewer main that extends towards the former Sailwinds Park. That's an old clay pipe. It has leaky joints and a lot of groundwater infiltrates into that system. A portion of that system in the area of the project that's covered by the master plan that Matt presented and some of the infrastructure along Burn Street, those facilities are going to be upgraded with newer pipe that doesn't have leaky joints, which should reduce the loading on the wastewater treatment plant and improve the infrastructure that is there in the city. So this is an opportunity to upgrade the facility using a combination of public and private funds, and I think will be a great benefit to the city.
Thank you, sir. There were two questions that came in that were almost exactly very similar, but they want to know what you're going to do to address the current state of the parcels in terms of where they are now, in terms of the existing fences and the attractiveness of the property as it exists today.
Yeah, we've heard this concern by some of the people in the neighborhood. We understand that. We are always concerned about the appearance of the property and also how well it functions. At the moment, the fences are there to keep traffic, foot traffic and vehicular traffic off of it, so it doesn't disturb the soil and the grass until that grass is established. We can't remove the silt fence. We actually had a couple of, the police actually responded to a call of a couple of dirt bikes out there last Friday, I think it was, tearing up the property on the open space we have. So as we have reported to people who have asked that question, we have a combination of factors we have to consider. The environmental factors, right? The cost of what it would take to actually build up the ground and amend the soil and grow grass out there in a way that we could then take down the fences. And then of course the appearance, that is something that we're concerned about. So we are researching what the costs are to do those things. And then the board will get together and make a decision as to what's the best way to approach that. Ideally, we'll get the private developers that we're trying to bring in, and they'll take care of all of that. But we understand that's a timing issue. We don't know how long that's going to take, so we weigh all of that.
Okay, thank you. Next question is about Marina. The question says on the designs you have, looks like 125 foot marina. Why do you need an additional marina when the municipal marina is not currently fully subscribed?
So I don't believe it's 125 foot marina. The marina we actually don't even have in either phase 1 or phase 2. It's kind of an ancillary phase. And it really is a matter of demand, right? When the private sector demands that type of usage, when the private sector wants that kind of amenity, right? When the hotel developer says, hey, I need transient slips for people to come in and spend the night, or transient slips for people to come and enjoy the restaurants, when our retailers who are providing food and beverage amenities at Cambridge Harbor say, we need people to be able to come in by boat. And when the owners of property out at Cambridge Harbor say, we'd like to have a boat that we can then walk to and use, that's a private sector demand. And if we have if we identify a marina development partner who runs their numbers and say, we can make a marina work there based on our numbers, that's what we're going to do if when and if the demand is there.
Okay, great. Questions come in, and again, it's somewhat related to the question I asked earlier, but I did have it categorized differently. There has been some activity, in fact, recently this week, in terms of what the role of the mayor is with CWDI and what the concerns are about the changes to the articles in the corporation.
So, you know, we always appreciate when someone who is concerned about the project comes to us if they have some ideas and how maybe you can operate it better. We believe that's what the mayor was trying to do when he made his announcement on Tuesday. The board will meet again on May 22nd, and we will look at the suggestions that he's made and find and determine whether or not those types of changes to the articles are necessary to help us improve our organization and accelerate our mission.
Okay, great. Question came in about current websites and the way information is publicly made available. I could probably take a stab at this one too, but if you want to take it. Yeah. So the current website it was built specifically for attracting businesses. That was the kind of the design principle behind it. And after getting feedback from you guys, our job as the chambers, we're going to actually rebuild that website. So over the next, hopefully within the next 3 weeks, you'll actually see a new version of the site that comes up that'll actually make it much easier for you to find things that you can't find today. It'll be mobile friendly. The current site really isn't very mobile friendly if you look at it. So we are going to be, that'll be a chamber activity. If you're unhappy with what it looks like, you can call, yell at me, because it'll be me and my team that will be building that site. So hopefully you'll see that come up soon. We're taking a lot of feedback we've heard from various folks of what you can and cannot find on the site. And hopefully we'll get that all up there. Once, again, we go live, if there isn't things that are on there you like, send an email into info@CWDI.md. We'll take a look at it and we'll see what we can do to get it changed. But at that point, we'll be in full control of the website. So we'll be able to make changes a little faster and be a little bit more responsive to your questions in terms of what's out there. There was one more. I think there's only one more question that I did not get to, and I lost it as I was answering that question. Hold on 1 second. So, and again, this will might be a good question for Frank. I think you guys answered this, but I'm going to answer it again. I think it's a good question to end on for tonight. Is we've been at it for 30 years. The development plans have changed over time. What have you seen change, and what do you project or think might change over the next 3 or 4 years as you're trying to do a build out?
Okay, so again, I've been at this for over 30 years, and we have certainly gone through a lot of iterations of the plan. Ironically, when you look at the original pretty picture in 1992, we saw the hotel at the Point. Today, the hotel is at the Point. Over 30 years ago, we saw public open space in front of the hospital. We thought the hospital would be here forever. Obviously, that did not occur. So the hospital was a game changer for us. It essentially took an 11-acre opportunity, as I said before, and turned it into a 40-acre opportunity. But what happens going forward is really going to be dictated what the market says. You know, what is financially feasible there. It's important that whatever we do here is going to be sustainable. I mean, the worst thing we can do is do development for development's sake, and then 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years from now, there's a failure. It's not, we get one chance to do this. And sometimes the right answer is, no, not right now, we need to wait. And that's the beauty of being a nonprofit development corp. We have the benefit of time. For-profit master developers, they don't have the benefit of time. They have a profit motive, and often they're answering to equity investors who are expecting return. A little different in the case of a nonprofit development corp. So I think the important thing is that we have a plan, and that plan is dynamic. It may not look the same today as it does next year, but it is going to evolve. But the bottom line is, you know, the hotel is something that we've been striving for. It's something that is on the immediate horizon. We have an opportunity to expand yacht maintenance. And of course, as we've defined this project all along, it's a mixed-use development. Mixed-use development means residential, retail. You know, the challenge is going to be retail. And as I've often said, you know, if you're looking at roughly 30,000 square feet of retail, that's a lot for this community to absorb, okay? We hope we need 30,000 square feet of retail. And if we need more, we need to direct it downtown because there's plenty of opportunity there as well. So I would just say that we have a plan. We have a master site plan that essentially sets a street grid and creates development parcels that then are available for developers who can deliver and are willing to adhere to the community vision, because that's ultimately still here. Over 30 years, I've heard from the community and said, what's in it for us? What's in it for us? How can we make sure that this development is for everyone in our community? And I think the plan allows us to control that. And that's the important thing, again, is having control. And we have local control. And that's the best control you can have.
Thank you, Frank. Anybody else on the panel? Any last words before we close out the formal meeting?
Bill can do the closeout, but just so people are aware, I think Bill will let you know that how you can find this presentation. It will be made available to the public. And then I will also be working with the board to identify any questions that have come into them, maybe individually or through the press. We've received some questions from the press lately, and we'll be issuing those out in written form so everybody can see the questions and answers. We'll just do it verbatim questions and verbatim answers. So you'll see those things coming out in the next couple of days.
So I just want to say in closing, thank you all for coming out tonight. I do want to say, as a city appointee, being appointed to this board as a community leader, born and raised here my entire life, I would ask that as we are having conversations about this project, also turn to the elected officials to ask them also questions as it pertains to their appointing authorities, because as I stated before, a lot of the press that has gone out, specifically from the city side, has not highlighted any of the efforts that I have personally taken, countless time, hours talking to our city elected officials, our city manager, our current city manager. I've met with him prior to me being appointed to this board personally, have had conversations. So I'm on this board as a voice. I don't know all of the ins and outs about development, but I do know workforce development, and I do know how to ask the difficult questions when at the table. So again, my name is Shayla Cisco. Email address is shayspeaks@cwdimd.org, and I welcome you all to ask me any questions. The questions I don't have the answers to, I'm going to transparently share with you. I don't have the answer, but as a community leader and as one that serves this board, I'm committed to getting answers to you. So thanks again for coming tonight. Our next board meeting is May the 22nd, and all of our board meetings are open for the public to come as well, to actually listen to these meetings. Thank you so much.
Okay, so if your question was not asked the way you wanted it to be asked, that's on me, not on them. So send it back in and I'll make sure it gets to them verbatim. As Matt said, they're taking questions in. So if you don't feel I asked your question appropriately, the way you wanted it to be asked, send it back in. I will make sure I get it to them, and they will actually get it posted back out. We'll get that out through multiple channels to make sure folks get it. I know there was an article recently, I think in the Banner, where some of the questions were answered and put through. I'm sure that the Democrats here today, so I'm sure they'll actually have some things out there as well. But again, send those questions in to info@CWDIMD. We'll make sure they get routed out and get you the answers. Watch for the new website. Let us know what you like and don't like about it. We will adjust as fast as we could possibly adjust for that. I'm sure the panel's going to stick around for any of you guys who want to come up and have a chat with them. They'll be here for a while. We have the room for quite a while, so feel free to stay in. We are going to end the recording session so that stops now. This recording will be up if you want to go back and rewatch, because I do talk fast.